Welcome to Short Times. Today we will take a quick look at 1984's fantasy film, Ghostbusters, which has 7.5 IMDb rating. The film opens inside the New York Public Library, where a curator, Alice Drummond, is first assembling books prior to going to a remote and void segment. She puts a book back on the rack, not seeing that the books behind her are suspending across the passageway. Afterward, she passes the card index racks as they open behind her, and unexpectedly start to fling their items very high. Terrified and shouting, she goes through the room prior to being come by an inconspicuous phantom, which alarms her awfully. This leads into the title card. After the initial title shot, the film go on in the Paranormal Examinations Department of Columbia College, where Dr. Peter Venkman, Bill Murray, is leading a test on Spanish pesetas with a geeky male understudy, Stephen Tash, and an alluring female understudy, Jennifer Runyon. Venkman constantly teases and lies about her capacities, while appreciating controlling electric shocks to the male understudy. Having at last had enough, the male understudy leaves, and Venkman keeps on playing with the young lady. Dr. Beam Stantz, Dan Aykroyd, enters and quickly starts to enlighten Venkman concerning the locating at the library, demanding they leave without a moment's delay to look at it. Venkman makes a date with the understudy and follows Stantz out. After showing up at the library, Venkman and Stantz get together with Dr. Egan Spengler, Harold Ramis, and Venkman continues to request a series from individual and critical inquiries regarding her clinical and social history, before the three head down to the area the Phantom evidently occupies. While down there, the three men gather ectoplasmic buildup, find a tall balanced stacking of books from floor to roof, and barely get away from a falling cabinet. Turning similar corner as the custodian, they see the Phantom, a straightforward type of an older woman, Ruth Oliver, perusing a book. Having no clue about what to do, Venkman starts to converse with the Phantom, as though it were a woman in a bar. She shushes him. Before Stantz broadcasts he knows what to do, they covertly approach the Phantom. Before Beam shouts, "Get her!" and the Phantom transforms to a horrendous, skeletal spirit, terrifying the triplet, who run shouting from the library. They overlook the library overseer, John Rothman, in their unhinged way out. After they've quieted down a little, they stroll back to the college. Venkman taunts Beam's stupid arrangement, and Egan declares that in view of his readings, they currently have a great difference in really getting a Phantom and holding it endlessly. Notwithstanding, when they return to the school, they meet the senior member, Jordan Charney, who lets them know that their award has been ended because of their trashy and exceptionally suspect discoveries, exploration, and strategies. Peter and Beam sit drinking nearby, and Beam sulks about their hopeless possibilities. Before Peter proposes this development happened, so they could start a new business for themselves. As the world's most memorable firm for paranormal examinations and ends, Peter persuades Beam to bring out a home loan on his experience growing up back home and use it for startup capital. The triplet looks at an unfilled firehouse to use as a base camp, and keeping in mind that Egan identifies the numerous issues with the actual structure, Beam is next to himself with fervor at the possibility of living and working there, uniquely with the fireman Paul in the lobby. At 55 Focal Park West, traditional artist Dana Barrett, Sigourney Weaver, gets back with food. Her neighbor, Hugh Bernard, and bookkeeper Louis Tully, Rick Moranis, stops her in the corridor, telling her that her TV had been left on. Louis badgers her about a forthcoming party he's facilitating, and Dana at last brushes him away and enters her loft. As she is taking care of her food, she sees that her eggs are currently jumping out of their shells and cooking themselves on her ledge. She then, at that point, hears a snarl coming from her cooler, opens it, and sees a powerful sanctuary and a dog-like animal that snarls Zool, voiced by Ivan Reitman, before Dana madly closes the entryway. Back at the recently initiated Ghostbusters Central Command, Beam pulls up, stunning Peter with the new business vehicle, an old beat-up emergency vehicle that needs a great deal of work. Peter returns inside, makes casual chit-chat with their new secretary, Janine Annie Potts, and sits around idly for business. Dana shows up looking for a clarification for the occasions in her kitchen. Peter plays vivaciously with her, while Egan and Beam look at her momentarily and guess regarding what might be the reason for her experience. In the wake of settling on a game plan, Peter demands going with Dana back to her condo, where he randomly glances around. However, for the most part plays with her. He thoroughly searches in the kitchen and sees the eggs on the counter. However, nothing else strange. Dana is irritated. However, Peter keeps on beseeching her for a date, promising to take care of her concerns with an end goal to dazzle her. Afterward, the Ghostbusters lounge around appreciating supper, celebrating getting their most memorable client, However, Beam needs to tell them that the feast has quite recently utilized the remainder of the business's frivolous money. Luckily, even as the business's disappointment is looking straight at them, Janine at long last gets a critical call about a phantom that needs evacuation right away. Peter, Beam, and Egan rapidly dress and race out of their base camp to the Sedgwick lodging, where the chief, Michael Ensign, educates them regarding a phantom on the 12th floor. They've generally had issues, he tells them. However, of late it's gone crazy. The Ghostbusters guarantee him they'll deal with it and go to the 12th floor. Egan and Beam stress over their hardware, which Peter portrays as an unlicensed atomic gas pedal, and conclude that they'll disregard the risk until further notice. They make ab discussion with a visitor, Murray Rubin, outside the lift, and they let him know they will kill a cockroach, to which the visitor replies, "That is have to be some cockroach." He takes the following lift. Very quickly after the Ghostbusters leave the lift, a house cleaner surprises them, and they almost kill her with their proton packs. The three split up, and Beam ultimately sees the phantom, a stout green mass eating all that on a room administration truck. Beam attempts to hit it with his proton pack yet misses, and it takes off, scared. Beam calls Peter on his walkie-talkie, and Peter, who is presently up close and personal with the apparition, is abruptly gone after by it. Beam races to Peter and tracks down him on his back, canvassed in green ooze. Yet entirely in any case, alright? Egan calls them and illuminates the other two that the phantom went into the inn's dance hall. They quiet the lodging administrator, and afterwards set to chip away at containing the little green apparition. While shooting their weapons all around the room, Egan out of nowhere cautions the others not to cross their streams, in light of the fact that to do so would bring about the obliteration of all life, as far as you might be concerned. In the wake of annihilating a large part of the assembly hall with their genuinely unsound proton packs, the Ghostbusters at last snare the phantom and burst victoriously from the dance hall, before the restless chief and a large group of visitors burst in. The Ghostbusters wrangle with the chief more than the $5,000 note briefly, and afterward return to home base, triumphant. This fruitful chase ends up being nevertheless the main of an unexpected rash of hauntings mean lively business for the Ghostbusters. There is a montage of a progression of missions, news spots, news cutouts, and tales about the Ghostbusters' new notoriety and achievement. They are even consulted by Larry Lord and Joe Franklin themselves. Peter momentarily meets with Dana after her symphony practice, and plays a piece with her prior to enlightening her concerning Zool, whom he has found is related with an old Sumerian lord of obliteration, Gozer. He tells her that he'll go over it in more detail over supper. Lastly, she consents to a date. The Ghostbusters before long recruit a fourth man, Winston Zedmore, Ernie Hudson, a dark common sort fellow, who is only searching for a task. Recruited quickly by Beam and Peter, Winston is given 2 or 3 snares and begun by Beam to find out about disposing of the phantoms, while Peter is educated that there is a man from the EPA sitting tight for him. Walter Peck, William Atherton, the bombastic EPA delegate, condescendingly converses with Peter, declining to recognize that Peter is, as a matter of fact, a PhD, and in this way, Dr. Venkman, and momentarily questions him about the conceivable natural effect of their business, and explicitly, their exceptionally assembled storeroom. He requests to see it, yet Peter simply just a tad prior to tossing him out. Beam shows Winston how they empty the apparitions they've caught into the storage space, while Egan concedes he is stressed over the office's approaching limit issue, and the bigger issue it demonstrates. To represent, Egan lets them know that his most recent examination demonstrates that the city is encountering a giant expansion in paranormal movement, contrasting it with a 600-pound Twinkie. Peter goes along with them, referencing the EPA, and importantly inquires, shouldn't something be said about the Twinkie? A concise shot on the highest point of Dana's structure shows that canine-like foreboding figure sculptures on the rooftop are falling to pieces, and genuine creatures are under the stone. Back inside, Dana gets back, and is indeed confronted by Lewis, who is going on and on over about his party. He is frustrated when Dana lets him know she has a date. She disposes of him once more, and goes into her condo, stripping down and chatting on the telephone. She sits in a rocker briefly prior to seeing similar snarling sounds from the kitchen. Before she can respond, 3 arms burst from the seat and hold Dana down, as she is hauled through her kitchen entryway to one of the fear canines. One more shot on the rooftop shows that the figures of grotesqueness on the rooftop have totally fallen to pieces, and whatever was in them is free. Lewis's party go on as he chatters about the value proficiency of his facilitating a gathering. 2 visitors appear, hand Lewis their jackets, and he tosses them unnoticing on the Fear Canine sitting at his work area. It thunders and blasts through the entryway, evidently solely after Lewis. He runs out of the loft through Focal Park prior to being cornered and gone after external bar on the green. In the meantime, Peter shows up at Dana's loft, venturing over the bloodletting of Lewis's party, and thumps on the entryway. Dana opens it, wearing a smooth red dress, and inquires, "Are you the keymaster?" Peter says no, so she furiously pummels the entryway in front of him. Once more, he thumps and enters subsequent to responding to her inquiry yes. Dana says that she is Zool, and they should get ready for the approaching of Gozer, the Destructor. Peter converses with her and opposes the head Dana's forceful advances prior to mentioning to talk with the genuine Dana. From the get-go, Dana hesitantly answers, "There is no Dana, there is just Zool," attempting to kiss him. However, Peter, actually attempting to break through to the genuine Dana Barrett, controls her. The head Dana currently turns out to be apparently irritated at his diligence, as Peter by and by asks about the genuine Dana. She answers in an absurd devilish voice, "There is no Dana, just Zool." Peter mockingly excuses her and gives her to the count of 3 to converse with the genuine Dana. With each count, Dana presents further indications of her ownership, at first wickedly feigning exacerbation, then gasping like a creature, lastly thundering like a devilish monster, and mystically drifting over her bed. She turns over in midair to confront at Peter, whom requests that she, if it's not too much trouble, descend. Dana thunders savagely at him, at last alarming him. Lewis, looking rumpled and by and large mishandled, runs out from Focal Park meandering aimlessly, and asks a handsome taxi horse in the event that he is the guardian. The driver, Danny Stone, pursues him off, so he takes off shouting about an indication of Gozer's appearance. The NYPD shows up at the Ghostbusters Central Command to drop off Lewis, who's been caught and dismissed by both the city prison and Bellevue's psych ward. Egan takes a gander at him momentarily and takes him inside. Lewis uncovers he is Vince Clortho, keymaster of Gozer. He happens about the historical backdrop of Gozer, how the god expects different structures, and would mean the annihilation of the civilization he targets. During the test, Peter calls and enlightens Egan concerning the advancements with Dana, who is presently lies intensely calmed on the bed close to him. Egan educates Peter consequently concerning Lewis's clairvoyant change and demands Peter return to base camp. Winston and Beam are driving back to the workplace, Winston driving, while Beam inspects the extremely odd diagrams of Dana's apartment complex. Winston gets some information about his confidence in God, and conjectures that the explanation they've been so occupied recently is on the grounds that the dead have been coming back to life, as it was predicted in the Book of Disclosures, as a forerunner to Day of Atonement and the Apocalypse. Beam considers this. Back at base camp, Walter Peck has gotten back with a court request, a cop and a Con Edison specialist, Larry Dilg, expectation on closing down the storeroom. Egan attempts to work them out of it, and Peter shows up with perfect timing to alienate Peck some more, before the cop mediates and the Con Ed fellow, albeit profoundly hesitant taking care of hardware he has never seen, stop the power matrix. An admonition signal sounds, and everybody clears the structure, as the storeroom thunders and starts to obliterate the cellar. A heavenly light show happens, as a wide range of paranormal energy blasts through the structure and shoots out of the rooftop. Across town, Dana promptly awakens from her sedation, and strolls toward her lounge room window. Lewis is energized, asserting this is the sign he was hanging tight for. Beam and Winston show up to observe the calamity's prompt repercussions, even as Peck requests they all be captured for causing it. Irritated at this affected boaster altogether lying about them while overlooking his own liability in this calamity, Egan assaults Peck, getting everybody captured. Apparitions spin out of control through the city, yet the greater part of the energy appears to run straightforwardly to Dana's structure. Dana snarls at the energy, tearing out the mass of her condo in a little blast. Sitting in prison, Beam shows Egan and Peter the plans of Dana's apartment complex, calling attention to profoundly strange strategies and materials, particularly close to the rooftop. Egan lets them know that the structure he's found was planned by a crazy designer specialist named Ivo Shander. In the 20s, Shander was clearly so sickened by World War I that he concluded he would attempt to achieve the apocalypse with a mysterious society of Gozer admirers. They performed ceremonies on Dana's structure, and the actual rooftop was intended to be the doorway to permit Gozer into our reality. A gatekeeper shows up, Reginald Velgenson, and lets the Ghostbusters know that the chairman needs to meet them to manage the rash of phantoms and other unfathomable peculiarity occurring all through the city. Lewis shows up at Dana's obliterated condo, presenting himself as the keymaster. A grinning Dana answers she is the watchman, and they share an enthusiastic kiss before leisurely advancing up to the rooftop through a legendary flight of stairs behind the wall, where Dana's cooler used to be as lightning streaks forebodingly. The four men and Peck are brought before the city chairman, David Margulies, both contending their sides. Peck asserts the Ghostbusters are extortionists and use nerve gases to compel individuals to daydream and have dreams of apparitions. Winston moves forward and safeguards the things he's viewed as genuine, while various city authorities like the fire boss present proof of unusual peculiarities, of which the Ghostbusters have the main conceivable clarification. Beam uncovers that the city is set out toward a calamity of scriptural extents, and Venkman at last requests to the likelihood that the chairman could be answerable for saving the existences of millions of enlisted citizens. Persuaded, the city chairman tosses Peck out of his office and offers anything that help he can to the Ghostbusters. Individuals have assembled by and large around the high-rise, which has obviously turned into the focal point of the whole wreck. They cheer as the Ghostbusters show up with a police escort and following public gatekeeper troops, and Peter mugs for the group. The four men put on their proton packs and are ready to enter, yet an unexpected tremor appears to swallow them underneath the road. At last, they arise safe to the preceded with cheers from the group. They rally and head inside. When inside, they should climb the steps to Dana's 22nd floor loft. Dana and Lewis lie on a huge stone table as lightning streaks in obscurity sky above them. Dana enticingly awakens, trailed by Lewis. They gaze in wonderment at the huge sanctuary before them, then stroll toward the contrary stone platforms where the dread canine sculptures once stood. The Ghostbusters show up to find Dana's loft wore out, and that's just the beginning or less annihilated. They see the flight of stairs in the kitchen and go up. Dana and Lewis stand on their platforms and raise their arms to the sky. They are unexpectedly struck by electrical discharges which they divert toward the sanctuary entryway, making it grind open and flagging the appearance of Gozer the Gazerian. With the sanctuary entryways at last open, Dana and Lewis presently retain their full power, as the Ghostbusters show up with perfect timing, see the lightning unite on the wicked couple in a gigantic impact, changing them back into the immense dread canines, who currently turn and thunder menacingly at the Ghostbusters prior to jumping towards the site of the sanctuary entryways. Gozer shows up as a colorful female with a tall, dim flat top and crimson eyes, Slavitsa Jovan. Egan brings up that she's not exactly a lady, but instead takes the state of anything it desires. Peter spurs Beam into conversing with her. Beam officially demands that Gozer gets back to her place of beginning. However, she answers by inquiring as to whether he is a divine being. He says no, and Gozer answers by shooting lightning from her fingers and almost flinging the Ghostbusters off the rooftop. They refocus and choose to go after Gozer, yet she deftly stays far from their streams and terrains behind them. Another assault demonstrates unproductive as she vanishes as opposed to being trapped in the streams. Accepting they are successful, the Ghostbusters start to celebrate. However, it is fleeting as Gozer's roaring voice is heard over the city, requesting that they pick the type of the destructor. Peter advises everybody to clear their psyches and don't consider anything, so no structure will be taken, yet it is plainly past the point of no return. Beam concedes he gave his all, yet something just popped to him, something he thought would never hurt anybody. It's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. A 10-story, white, puffy marshmallow man starts to walk the roads of the city, squashing everything underneath. At the point when he is sufficiently close, the Ghostbusters open fire, setting Mr. Remain puffed burning. As he climbs the structure, Ruler Kong style, getting as far away as possible, the Ghostbusters show up out of thoughts, until Egan recommends that they cross the streams, with an end goal to close the entryway and obliterate Gozer's gateway. Understanding this will presumably mean their destruction, the Ghostbusters precede the arrangement and set out to complete the god. Crossing the streams truly does for sure bring about a disastrous blast, obliterating the sanctuary and burning the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, pouring liquid marshmallow all around the road, including an onlooking Walter Peck. Back on the rooftop, the Ghostbusters have made do, and gradually rise up out of the rubble, canvassed in marshmallow. Peter finds the broiled bodies of the fear canines and trusts Dana dead. Behind him, however, her fingers break through the solidified remains of the creature, and the Ghostbusters rapidly fall to pieces the rest, liberating her and Lewis. They leave the rooftop, and winced.